But even in the pre-colonial times, the interzones trade had become clear. Textiles, Emianda, were coming from the coast in Zanzibar. The glass beads in Kwanzi were from the same source, and so were the guns. Ivory, Emino, however, was coming from the interior of the African continent, and so were the salt, the backcloth, the hose, etc. It is this historical mission of the need for prosperity that led us to discover the first ideological principle of our movement, of the NRM, as the minister was saying, patriotism, love Uganda. Why? It is because you need it for your prosperity as a market, among other advantages. However, learning from the history of other countries and also seeing what is happening in Uganda once it settled down and started recovery, we discovered that the internal market is not enough. As we speak today, Uganda has got surplus of milk, maize, bananas, beef, sugar, cement, steel products of certain types, etc., as the minister was telling you here. Where do we sell all these? This is when the NRM asked the Ugandans the following questions. Number one, have you heard of East Africa? Because you are stuck with your products. Have you heard of East Africa? Because you are busy with the tribes. Some people are telling you, we, as Banyankore, we, as Baganda, we, as Acholi, some of those pharaohs are busy telling you about the tribes. If nga abasoga bene, we are this one. But why don't we solve if those are enough? Why do we have a problem of surplus milk, surplus sugar, surplus this? And this is where the NRM said, have you heard of East Africa? Have you heard of Africa? Why don't you check whether they can buy what we produce and also buy what they produce? Indeed, as I speak now, East Africa and Africa are already buying parts of our surpluses. Otherwise, these sectors of the economy would have collapsed by now. That is how the NRM identified the second ideological principle of Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism. Love Africa. Why? It is because we need it for our prosperity. This realization of the need for bigger markets was not only clear to the NRM. Others before us had realized this. Germany was not one country until 1871. German-speaking people were divided into 39 kingdoms of Prussia, Saxony, Bavaria, etc. However, there was a strong business group in Prussia known as Junkers. It is written Junkers, but they pronounce it Junkers, that saw the importance of a united German market. Working with Bismarck, they pushed the Pan-Germanism agenda, the unity of the Germans. France, by 1789, had been a united kingdom for a long time. There were, however, internal taxes between the provinces of France known as Gabelle. Those provinces were fiefdoms of the princes of those areas. The rising French middle class, the bourgeoisie, could not accept this. Indeed, the removal of these internal taxes were part of the grievances of the French Revolution. On these two ideological principles, of patriotism and Pan-Africanism, we added socio-economic transformation and democracy. This was all to achieve historical mission number 1, prosperity for the African people through market integration. We are glad by 1980, the African leaders had started seeing the importance of market integration as part of the Lagos Plan of Action. When the NRM took power, we worked with the Wazee, Mzee Mwinyi, Mzee Mkapa, and Mzee Moi to revive the East African community that was relaunched on the 30th of November, 1999. The East African community has now expanded to incorporate Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, DRC, and Somalia. In addition, we have got COMESA and the CFTA, the Continental Free Trade Area. We need to remove all the trade barriers and develop infrastructure to facilitate this trade. However, we also need to ensure that countries that are beginning to come up are assisted. We don't want a common market where some countries benefit, others lose. No, it's very dangerous. The countries which are coming up must be assisted so that they also trade equitably. We should never allow trade imbalances among member states to persist. This market integration will address the historical mission of prosperity. However, we had also identified the second historical mission as that of strategic security. How can Africa ensure that never again would its people be threatened by anybody having gone through the 5 centuries of the slave trade, colonialism, and neocolonialism? Economic integration, if it is fully implemented, will address the issue of prosperity. However, during the Second World War, the developed countries of Holland, Belgium, Denmark, France, Norway, etc., became victims of German aggression. They are being developed notwithstanding. It was the Soviet Union and later the USA and UK that defeated the hegemonic Hitler. Even we, the Africans, 500,000 of Africans, took part in that war, as did 2.5 million Indians who took part in that war to save those countries, France and Holland and all that. The highly developed Israel, in terms of technology, would find it difficult to survive in that zone without the cover of the United States of America. Some actors in the world talk of achieving superiority in the 4 dimensions: land forces, air forces, at sea, the Navy, and in space. Where does this leave Africa? Are we going to exist or not exist with the permission of others? Are we only to thrive with the permission of others? Coming to multidimensional strategic security, only 4 countries have been to the moon. These are USA, Russia, China, and India recently. Can Uganda manage a serious space program even when it becomes a first world country? As we tried to answer that question, there was already an answer given by our elders before independence. This was Uhuru na Umoja, freedom and unity. The present weaknesses in Africa are partly due to the mistake of arrivism, where the leaders prefer to remain big fishes in small ponds. It was only Mwalimu Nyerere of Tanganyika and Mzee Karume of Zanzibar that consummated the economic and political integration of the two countries to create Tanzania that has been a great success. Recently, the Union of Tanzania celebrated 60 years. We congratulate our brothers and sisters of Tanzania. Mbakubire kumungaro. Economic and political integration where possible are the correct answer to the question of prosperity and strategic security. It handles the two missions. In 1963, we were about to achieve the political federation of East Africa. There is a picture which I will give some of the, you can see it there. That picture. I have that picture. I will give it to a few people after my speech. But that was 1963, Uganda, August. They were saying federation this year, Federation of East Africa this year. That's what they were saying. Thank you. You can see the declaration, that declaration by our leaders. However, along the way, some of them developed cold feet. That is why Mwalimu Nyerere and Mzee Karume must be hailed as some of the most devoted Africans that have ever lived. You can be sure that if that federation had taken off, so many of the problems that afflicted us could have been avoided. Certainly, Amin would never have taken power in Uganda. If that federation was there, Idi Amin would never have taken power in Uganda here. Maybe the problems of Rwanda and Burundi could have been handled differently. The problems of South Sudan and Somalia could possibly have been handled differently, as would have been the problems of Congo. Why do I say this? Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, under one political authority, would have been so strong that their voice in these matters would have been decisive. I remember, for instance, our leaders then took a stand on the issue of Congo in 1965. Soon, however, the states started taking divergent positions, which would not have been the case if they were under one political authority. We must again salute Mwalimu Nyerere and Tanzania, because without the support of much of Africa, except for Zambia, Botswana, Algeria, Nasser's Egypt, and Guinea-Conakry, they were able to be a reliable rear base for the anti-colonial armed struggle that raged in Southern Africa from 1962 to 1994, when South Africa achieved freedom. It is a pity that after victory, we only got Uhuru, independence, and not Umoja, unity, especially political integration. The third historical mission we identified was the Undugu, Brotherhood, of the 1.5 billion African people. These people belong to only 4 linguistic groups: the Niger-Congo, the Bantus and the Kwa, the Nilo-Saharan, the Nilotics, the Cushitic and the Sudanic, the Afro-Asiatic, Arabic, Amharic and Tigrinya, and the Khoisan, the group in South Africa. Recently, I had a delegation from Congo, but we did not have a French translator. However, there was a Runyoro Rutoro speaker from Ituri province in Congo, Tebasima Atenyi. I therefore spoke in Runyoro, and he translated to the rest in French. This was just like 2 weeks ago when I had a group from Congo. I was speaking in Runyoro, and he was translating to those people in French. Apart from similar Inter-Lacustrine, Bantu, and Nilotic dialects, we have the good luck of Swahili, which is a neutral, non-tribal dialect developed by our ancestors when they met at the East African coast to conduct business. Therefore, the third historical mission is a question, in quotes. Why can't the responsible political actors use the undugu, the brotherhood, similarities or linkages of these people to create units that support the other two historical missions of prosperity and strategic security? You don't hear anybody talking, this is political class, talking about, I don't know what they talk about on TV. I normally once in a while watch, talking nothing.